Sunday, September 10th. Cheers, people. I'm starting off with Leslie Kepper. Finally got a chance to really give it a good listen this weekend. And I'll tell you what put me off is I like it. At first though, there was just a little bit of sharpness to my ear on some of the tones that she was singing. Now, whatever's going on, I just, that's how my body responds. When things are just a little bit sharper or just a little bit flat, I hear it, and I respond. So once it settled in, it's kind of like notes have to settle in. Then the magic started to happen. Veiled Matter by Leslie Kepper. Now it's interesting too that when I wake up this morning and I see on my news feed on Facebook that WFMU was giving her some airplay but also myself and Brian Day on a recent or probably on a show yesterday. They played Leslie Kepper and also Brian Day and Dereck Higgins. I'm in good company. So I wanted to let you know, Arvo, because I understand you probably do watch me, that this did come through. And it is good. It just took a minute. The other one I'll listen to separately at another time. The electronic tones and then the droning aspect of it, it settled in and I found myself getting into it. Leslie Kepper, Veiled Matter. Cheers, people. I really enjoyed sharing those video clips from my past. And backline was provided. Don't remember. Okay. Thank you very much, people, for oh my goodness, the comments on the video clips. They speak for themselves, So if I could, folks, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my story. Okay, is that okay? If you're not interested, now. I want to talk about my music history just a little bit. This was all going on when I started my channel showing records. This whole trajectory of me being a musician and in bands was going on all along. But as important as it is to me, it's also always been kind of hobbyist, where it's like I grew up with musical parents, but we were poor as hell. And one of the things that my dad always said is, get a real job. My mom said it too. Don't be no musician, get a real job. So I got real jobs, so I could, have a roof over my head. But music has always been number one for me. And RAF was actually not the most important band to me when it started. I was in several bands in the 80s, and my first claim to fame, or the first band that I started where I was trying to make something happen, was the band Digital Sex. And if I can see it to grab it real quick, I will. Yes. Come on, records. Okay. Records are so smashed together. Demiola, And then going back, Digital Sex. Do you have this album? Have you seen this record? Put this out in about 1984, 85. I'm very proud of this band. This was my first attempt. This was my first attempt to start my own band. It wasn't my first band. Digital Sex is on this. If you ever see this, Music from the Dead Zone. This is a compilation put out by the guy that was involved with the Sex Pistols. Oh man, I can't see his name right quick. But he contacted us to participate in this comp that he was putting out. For Against from Lincoln is also on here, but also of note to me is the fact that we're on a comp with Smirsh and Hunting Lodge, The Haters. I kind of like that fact. But Digital Sex was my first attempt to be taken seriously. Oh man, Diff Juzz right after. Diff and then Digital. Diff Juzz instrumental band on 4AD. Really cool stuff. And then right next to that is Diform. You guys know Diform? Kind of a dark, slightly industrial electronic sound. Okay, so to get back to my story, Digital Sex was happening and not happening at the same time as RAF. Turn your volume up if you need to. Digital Sex, was a serious attempt, to be heard. We got mentioned on MTV. We were the first band to put out a compact disc on the Sorted Sentimental label. Very collectible label out of France that put out very collectible editions of singles by Joy Division, Tuxedo Moon, Dirty Column, Psychic TV, and us for the first on CD. A high honor. But as I say, while all that was happening, I was working in the hospital. For a time, I was working in 2 hospitals after I'd worked at a children's home as a psychiatric technician. And I worked on multiple units. I particularly enjoyed working on the children's and the adolescent units because they weren't as dangerous as the ICU with adults. That's where I encountered, in the video that you saw yesterday, Underground Omaha or Omaha Underground, the original version of RAF with the little his hair wasn't red, kind of looks red. That's Matt Miller. Looks like a little kid, literally, like he's about 12 years old. That was how I got into the band. He was a patient in the hospital. I got to tell the story. Okay? And the deal was, in the hospital, he was hyper, but he was super intelligent and really into music, especially punk rock. And so we ended up talking a lot in the hospital, kind of bonded with him over music and his intelligence. After he got out, this was just at the time that, in the 80s, that touring bands started to tour nationally on the indie level, more so, like Black Flag, and those bands really kind of started something, a circuit. And so this is when all that exploded, and I was going to the shows and kept running into Matt at shows. I've told this before, but it's significant. So at an Effigies show, I believe the band is from Chicago, amazing show, I ran into Matt again, but he had Paul, that blonde-haired guitar player, the blonde-haired guitar player from RAF, was with him. And he bugged me again. So, man, we're really trying to find a bass player, And, I was about to brush him off again, but he said, this is the guitar player. And there was just something about Paul's countenance that I could tell. And so I gave it a chance. And that all happened while I was still trying to make digital sex happen. I met those guys, what does it say in the video, 1985? Yeah, that's right. Digital sex started in 83 and went all the way until the 90s, on and off. But RAF, we never formally did anything. We just were a band. It was for them a high school band. You know how those high school bands. And as you see, I'm older than the guys, about 10 years older than all the guys in the band. They were just teens in that video. But when I hooked up with them and heard those riffs that Paul wrote, I said, wow, this is good. And as you folks hear, this music to this day is standing the test of time. It's good. You also see that we were a punk band. That was our stance. That was our ground zero. That's the energy. So I'm really happy and proud of what we've done and the fact that we survived long enough to get this second album out. I put out our first tape in the 80s, These Days of Tears, which is a collector's item if you can find one. I've had some real ups and downs with RAF, but I'm real bonded with those guys, especially Tim and Paul, the drummer, and Paul on guitar. We're like the original members. Dan and Kelly, the second guitarist and the singer, shot new life into us. So the punk reunion video that you see from 2014, that's the second one. The first one happened in 2008 or 9, and that was the one where there's this big reunion of all the scene. I don't know who organized it, but it was really successful, and they wanted us to be the main band there were other bands, but so we were able to get Matt Miller out of Mothballs, and he sang at that show. Now I can upload, I have a clip from it, but the sound quality is bad, but you can see where Matt barely made it through the songs because he's out of breath, overweight. That stuff is tough, you know. But that's how Kelly and Dan ended up in the band, because they had something to do with getting us to basically become active again. Sometimes when I try to do this, I just get discombobulated. So I just want to share that we played some amazing shows with some amazing important bands in the history of punk and music, I think. It's legendary, our show with Dead Kennedys here in Omaha, where we blew the Dead Kennedys off the stage, but they weren't the only ones. We opened for a lot of bands whose names began with D, which I noticed, it's probably just coincidence, but we opened for Dead Kennedys, DRI, The Descendants, Die Kreutzen, but then we can get into some other bands, Adrenaline OD, Battalion of Saints, Millions of Dead Cops, Capital Punishment. I forget, there's more significant names. Oh, GBH, Adolescence. Shit, I played with Rick Agnew. RAF actually was his backing band for a couple of shows, and so RAF became Rick Agnew Fiasco, and that was minus Paul on lead guitar. Paul, happily acquiesced when when we were the requested band for Rick to come to the Midwest and do some shows put together by Ryan Myers up in Sioux City. As a result, became good friends with Rick Agnew to this day. Some other bands we opened for were some Discord bands, Beefeater, and around the same time this band, they weren't on Discord, but they were just getting started. No Effects. We opened for No Effects, and consequently, they recorded this in my basement the day after the show. as it says there, recorded in a basement in Omaha in 1987. Once I found out that this record had come out, it took me a while, but I kind of hunted the band down to say, hey, that was fun. Can I at least get a copy? I mean, you guys did it in my basement. It took me a while, but I got it. What's funny is that, people can be so silly. When I first talked about making this record or recording these demos, because that's what they wanted to. They were still on the Mystic label. Was that the name of the label? But they said, we got some new songs and we want to record them. And I remember that at the time that Fat Mike had injured his hand somehow. I think he had dislocated a finger or something. So he had two fingers splinted together with electrical tape. Those guys were just pure punk. They weren't going to go to the ER. But I had people actually tell me after I talked about the story originally years ago, that wasn't NoFX, that's not those guys, you didn't do that. How the fuck? What? I still have the 4-track cassette masters of this. Don't fuck with me. So when I finally got my copy, one of these, really pleased. Next thing I hear is rumblings that NoFX are talking about coming back to Omaha just to record again. Apparently with me, it never happened. But I heard this as a rumor, basically, But that's some of the stuff, I keep trying to keep it from going too yellow. That looks so funky, but nothing I can do about it. Just wanted to share that with you folks. Along those lines, I pulled and listened to Chairs Missing by Wire, all of side 1. And Digital Sex, we covered Wire. We did Sand in My Joints, and another one, I think off the first album. So that aspect was a part of what I was doing at the time, into the 70s, into the 80s, through the early 80s. Also, Paul, it's funny that you said, after watching the RAF videos, you said Plasmatics next. Well, check this out. I was in the first, literally, punk rock band in Omaha. We were called Elvis and His Boss, named after a Residents song. And we covered the Plasmatics, Butcher Baby. And that was before I was in RAF. And we only performed a few times, but we did Butcher Baby all the way with Destroying a Television on Stage. There's just a couple of pictures of it that exist. So I was on that. Something else that got played yesterday, in part. The McLean mix, Barton McLean and Priscilla McLean. Electro-surrealistic landscapes on the Opus 1 label. Some of that good, obscure electronic stuff from the 70s, 60s, and 70s. I didn't read all the notes. It probably would give some good background on this, but it's not just bloopy bleepy. This is pretty cool. Pretty interesting. I hadn't really listened to this ever deeply when I got a bunch of records from Moon June Records. So I listened to this yesterday. This is beautiful, wonderful. Mark Wingfield and Gary Husband. Gary Husband, guitar, drummer, pianist, who I met when I saw him playing with Alan Holdsworth, and he also plays with John McLaughlin in recent times. Tor and Vale. These are guitar and piano duets with soundscapes. The guitarist at times sounds like David Torn to me, which is a compliment. But in general, these pieces are beautiful and atmospheric. I use that word probably too much, but it's the right word. This is really good. I also want to just publicly thank Leonard for for sponsoring, managing, and keeping these musicians and this type of music alive. It's very, 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 very important. So I'll be honest, folks. I was hoping that by sharing more of the backstory of RAF, that perhaps I could get some more sales. The colored vinyl version is gone, but don't stop buying the record. That's literally what it feels like. The colored vinyl is done, no more sales. It's not about the colored vinyl, people. We did that like a lot of art people. You do something special, you want to make it special, people respond. But it's the music, and I'm showing you in the clips what the band, we captured it on the record. That's why, part of why it took so long is we wanted to capture the excitement and the edge that RAF has live. We do destroy. It wasn't just Jello Biafra who seriously but in a very friendly way joked, man, we haven't been blown away like that hardly ever. Why'd you guys do that to us? One of the biggest compliments I've ever got. And then more recently, Dave, I think is his name, the leader of Millions of Dead Cops. We were opening for them at the Lookout Lounge here, and we're just on stage just going crazy, and I look out and there he is in the audience, and he's slack-jawed. And so after we were done, I didn't even have to come up to him. He came up to us, what the fuck? And it was like that, very excited. What the fuck? How the fuck didn't we know about you guys? I love those moments. One more. GBH, Grievous Bodily Harm from the UK. I first saw them back in the 80s. And when I saw them, the guitarist, Jock, was unkind to me, racist, and called me the N-word. When I went up to the band, I was greeting Colin, the singer. I was excited. I really like those guys, as well as Discharge. And so he comes along and was really, really unkind, Colin said, what the hell are you doing talking to this inn, And Colin dressed him down. And then the guys from Agnostic Front, that was a double bill. Agnostic Front were amazing. I forget the singer's name, but he caught wind of what was going on, came over and jumped to my defense along with Colin, which I really appreciate. And they dressed Jock down pretty good. It's like, how the fuck, this is a fan, this are people. Years later, in the 20 whatever, GBH comes back through, and RAF is the opening band. This was so satisfying because, number one, we gave them a run for the money. GBH is good. We didn't blow them away, but we damn near did. But after the set, I went up to Jock and I said, you remember me? And he did. And he let me know that incident helped to change him. He said, I'm a changed man, and I want to apologize to you from the bottom of my heart. I had to step beyond that racist bullshit, and I have pictures of us, and I could tell it was genuine. So music is just a wonderful gift and a wonderful vocation, a wonderful, but also very intense and positive and negative experience. I've had some real bummers as a result of being in bands, and RAF in particular. But the positives outweigh the negatives, and I just wanted to try to share some of that with you. I will share more of my background musically. Some of the clips from the past with other bands I've been in, they're, to me, they're not up to, I did the things, but the performances aren't necessarily that good, but I'll find some more to share. But get this. This is world class. RAF. No Salvation. Get it. Send me to the post office tomorrow. Get yourself a copy, okay? And family out in California. We didn't Zoom. That's cool. We're in touch. Take care, everyone. Let me know how you're doing.